Leonard in Hukama died suicide at Wapiskat. Courtney, she died, I think it was a liver cancer, going to a school where there was heavy cancer rates. Young Jolene Winter, who died in Wakapika. That's little Trina Martin. She died at 4 years old in a house fire in a community where there was no fire truck. I always keep Shannon's picture. This is a young girl that killed herself in Waukesha, beautiful young girl. Chantal Fox that we lost in Wakapika, and then little Sylvain Noel, who was made a member of the Timmins firefighters just before he died. So I always keep the photos of these kids here to remind me what it is that we're doing.
Geez,
So the first thing would be to implement fully
Jordan's principle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second thing you do, if you, tomorrow they said, Charlie, fix it.
The first thing is Jordan's principle right now, because what we see with this child being denied is the government not spending money. So now the government's they've extended their Jordan's principle to a slightly larger group of kids, but we're still denying children. We have to close that education gap. Now, in fairness, the government's talking about closing the gap, but we need to move on it. But we need to move on a systemic change on education. That has to happen.
So what does that mean for Aboriginal communities, Aboriginal children in schools? For example, in your writing, you fought for years, I believe it was in Attawapiskat, there was a site reclamation, environmental damages school. You were trying to get the funding for that. They would contaminate lands, and kids are going to school in contaminated lands. So what does it mean in real terms for the systemic long-term change if we do that? What does it mean in terms of dollars?
Well, what we need to do is we need to establish systems of funding that are comparable to the provincial system. And so in terms of my region, the kids on reserve get about half of what they get in the provincial system. So we have to increase that. We also need to have proper accountability, so we're building proper schools, that the people who are overseeing the education system are actually educators and not bureaucrats or bean counters who've come in from another department. That's the system of education that we built provincially has delivered some of the best public education in the world at a very reasonable price. Anywhere you go in the province of Ontario, anywhere you go in Canada. So this isn't rocket science. We just need to say we're going to establish the same standards. And what's it going to cost? Well, what's it cost to us to have a generation of children coming out in Ontario and in reserve schools with literacy and numeracy rates of 18 and 20%?
Why do we have a problem when we're building structures in communities, whether it's schools or houses or other things? Why is there such a problem with the standards and the buildings, and they seem to be run down, and why is that?
Well, it's one thing I've learned over the years. The reason we don't have proper building codes on reserve is that government would have to spend the money to build the buildings properly. The reason we don't have fire codes is because they'd never get away with the fire traps. We lost 2 young men who burned to death in a jail cell that was run by the federal and provincial government, and they did not bother to put sprinklers in. Wow. They saved money not having sprinklers because they didn't have to do it on a reserve. But a federal or a provincial institution in a municipality would have had to have sprinklers. So they will not put those standards in place. Same with water standards. And then if government is going to put those standards in, then where's the training dollars so that we can actually make sure that people who are looking after water plants have the resources, that if we're going to have fire codes, that we actually can put the fire support systems in. I've had communities where kids have burned to death and there was no fire truck in the community.
Do you think in your heart that Canadians are racist?
I think that Canadians have moved an enormous way down the road, thanks to the work of the Truth and Reconciliation. Thanks to young leaders like Shannon Kustashian, Shannon Stream, who I've been very close with. A generation of kids have grown up hearing her story. To me, we should be focusing on those great stories. You go to South Ottawa, to schools where the kids are first-generation Muslim kids from Somalia, from Iraq, from Egypt. They have Shannon Kustashian clubs in South Ottawa of first-generation young kids who see her as a role model. So I think Canadians are there. It's a matter of us having the political will to break down these systems and start to say, let's find out what works. And, all the issues of treaty and all the other things, we're going to be on a journey for this is our journey. And it's going to be bumps on the road. But if we put those investments in the children, we're actually starting to build the kind of nation that we really, truly should be in the way, and I believe that Canadians are. So let's make the positive changes. Let's build up those role models, and let's stop sacrificing a generation of kids.